Today we're talking about number 26, The Attack. And whew, what a little adventure this book is. The first item of news that I want to talk about on this one. This is the record for the fewest number of notes on my screen. So as you may know, when I do these reviews, I write notes for usually inconsistencies, plot holes, interesting bits that I think need addressing. Usually it's usually the more negative stuff, because as I've said before, I'm a nitpicky sort of bloke. So a lot of my bullet points will be those sorts of things. This one only has two. Two! It's by far and away the best in terms of, I didn't really have to put any notes down. And because there are so few notes, I'm just going to cover them both straight off, regardless of where they are in the plot. And they both come pretty early in the book. The first one, page 19. We will get to the plot, by the way. I'm just getting these out of the way so I don't have to even look at my notes anymore. On page 18 and 19, Jake is talking about when he saw Kryak. And we'll get into who that is. I'm assuming you already know if you're watching this. When the Yerk died in your brain, you peered across the line between life and death. It's the Elemist talking to Jake. You broke the dimensional hold that blinds the humans to things beyond themselves. And in that moment, Kryak saw you. He saw that I had made myself known to you, that I had touched you, and he knew that you must therefore play some part in my plans. What the Elemist has basically said there is that when Jake's Yerk in his head was dying, Kryak saw Jake and knew that the Elemist had, quote, touched him. That sounds really dodgy. That he had made myself known to you. And I thought, hold on a minute. When did they first meet the Elemist? It was in book 7. When did Jake's Yerk die? Book 6. That doesn't make sense. Elemist is saying, I got to know you, or I got you to know me, Jake, before Kryak came to you, even though Kryak came to you before you even met me. Maybe he's implying that he'd already had an effect on the Animorphs before book 7 when he officially came to greet them. That's the only way that this makes sense. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. They got the books back to front. So the stranger should have come before the capture, if this were to be correct. Second point on the thing before I dispose of the list. Page 78. The animals are being attacked by the Howlers, which of course we will get into. And they're in a little house, and there's a laser gun fire through the door that's protecting them. And it's a Dracon beam, according to Jake. In the glow of the Dracon beam, I saw Axe walking steadily towards the door, etc., etc. And it's mentioned a few times that there are Dracon beams. You'd think at this point that Jake would recognise a Dracon beam when he saw it, so you wouldn't think he was mistaken for thinking of a Dracon beam when it's actually another type of weapon. If we go back to page 70, Axe is looking at a map of the galaxies, the sector of space that they're in. Axe says, we are more than 500 million light years from Earth. Before the Yerks could spread a tenth of this distance, they would have had to swallow not only Earth, but my planet as well. So again, there is the possibility that this makes sense if there's some background stuff going on that we're not aware of. But Axe basically said there, the Yerks could not have gotten to this part of space. Right. So how did the Howlers get Dracon beams, which, as we've learnt before, was a Yerk manipulation of the Andalite Shredder. So the Dracon beam originated with the Yerks, who are supposedly too far away to come to this place. And you could say, well, the Howlers could have, been teleported to the Escort. But when the Elemist comes to the Animorphs, he says the Escort, the Kryak's Howlers are going to attack the Escort. I don't really understand. It just causes a bit of a headache here, because there are so many ways that this could be possible, but they're rather convoluted and mostly unreasonable. How did the Howlers, who are so far away, get Yeerk weapons if we know from Axe that the Yeerks couldn't have gotten to them unless the Howlers travelled that massive distance straight to the Iscourt? How would they know they were there? Cryak's intervention, maybe? It just seems... We'll get into Ellimist and Cryak and the bizarreness that surrounds them. But those are the two plot points out of the way. Apart from that, I couldn't find any inconsistencies. There probably are some. I usually, once I've done these reviews, I go check Seropedia, which is an excellent site, by the way. And I look through the goofs and inconsistencies section and look to see if I've spotted any that they haven't got, or if they've spotted some that I didn't find. Interesting stuff, but let's crack on. The Animorphs are in an auditorium sort of thing at school watching a rendition of The Lion King when suddenly time freezes. Tobias appears, Axe appears, so all the Animorphs are in this one place. They already know, oh fuck, it's the Ellimist again. And sure enough, he turns up, he takes the form of some girl at the school and says, right, here's the deal, right? Bunch of these weird aliens, I want to protect them, I want you to protect them for me from this guy that only you know, Jake, because he appeared in your dreams, but now he's here and he's got these monsters and you're going to fight them over on that planet over there. Makes sense. Right. I will say I really liked the prologue before this, which brings back that little bit from Book 6, The Capture, where the Yeerk is dying in Jake's head and he sees this weird creature that we find out is called Cryak. Cryak? Crayon? Cryak? But we need, the Ellimist says that's this Cryak bloke, and Jake, he's the one you've been seeing in your dreams, and Jake's like, okay, he wanted to keep that to myself, if you don't mind. But now everyone knows. So apparently Cryak is the Satan to the Ellimist god. And you can compare them like that. So the Ellimist and Cryak are sort of like God and Satan. That's how it's put across. Ellimist loves beauty and nice things and pot noodles. Cryak loves Nazis, fucking daytime television and the Honda Jazz. You know, good and evil, okay? And apparently, the Howlers, who are under Cryak's, is it like allegiance? So we don't really learn that much, but these Howlers that belong to Cryak are attacking these Iscourt that, once again, the Ellimist doesn't really go into detail on. And the Ellimist says, I want to save this lot. If you don't save them, you're all fucked, right? And I've chosen you to save them. Of course, the Andalites are a bit flustered by this. Once they leave school, they go back to Cassie's rehab centre, of course, and they have a big discussion. Obviously, they're a bit peeved about the Ellimist just throwing them in. They're asking, why us? Why not somebody else? Why are we the chosen people? Who are these Iscourt we're saving? Why does it matter? Who's Cryak? All the questions, and they're all sort of played with quite nicely in there. And then Eric shows up. Eric shows up. By the way, the Animorphs know vaguely what the Howlers are because back in Book 10, the Chi described the Howlers in a way and how they destroyed the Pemlites, which were the creators of the Chi. So Eric turns up. At first, the Animorphs are like, well, he can't fight anyone, so why is he coming along? But it turns out that Eric is a very good decision, and in fact, one that they had to choose in order to survive, essentially, because Eric plays a major part in this book. So they all say yes, and then suddenly they're transported to this Iscourt world, which is described essentially as Legoland on steroids. So you just got Lego bricks everywhere, and it's all on massive platforms, huge structures, really colourful and wonderful. There's no guardrails or anything. So, and then these Iscourt that immediately greet them, and they're basically salesmen, or some of them are salesmen. But they land in an area where it's just filled with Iscourt salesmen, or what they call the trading guild, or something like that. Everything's a guild with the Iscourt. You've got Shoppers Guild, Warmonger Guild, Salesman Trading Guild, a guild for everything. But they're greeted by these salesman guild folk who are instantly like, I shall buy your memories. Why don't you buy these memories and fucking sell me your organs? And immediately the Animorphs are just like, well, what is this? We ended up in fucking New York or something. Believe me, I've been in New York. It's a bit like that sometimes. Almost got mugged by Mickey Mouse at one point and all his crew. Wasn't fun. I was in New York with my fiance, and I was naive to the ways of New York. And I saw a big Mario as you Americans call him. And I thought, oh, I'll just get a picture taken next to him. Big fucking mistake. Fucking whoosh. A wave of mascots of all different fucking colours and creeds come flying. And I'm ended up in the middle of this line of them. And Elmo has taken my phone, has taken a picture of me in this huge line of mascots, and they all just sort of curve around me. Give me money. And it's like fucking, I lost about $50 just in that moment. All I wanted was a picture of Mario. What a naive prick I was. Hey, that must have been what the Animorphs felt like at that point, just overwhelmed by these fucking money-grubbing little shits. The Animorphs ask where these howlers are that they're supposed to fight. So they're 7 against 7. And they're taken to an escort who's just simply called Guide. Must be part of the Guiders Guild. Although he does try to like trade them loads of things. So I imagine he's also part of the Traders Guild. I don't fucking know how it works with the escort. They're a weird bunch of sods. But he finds them shelter and they threaten him so that he does what they tell him to do. Obviously, Axe threatens to slice his head off and what have you. Tends to work. But they say, right, we'll sell you our memories. Rachel sells like a bit of her hair, so her hair's only like down to there now. And so the escort's like, yeah, I'll do what you need doing. Gives them a place to hide. Wonderful. Eventually, while they're walking around this Legoland-like place, they find a single howler coming up the stairs. Get into Battlemorphs. Go. And they don't really know what to expect, really. There's just this one howler. Apparently he's got loads of weapons. Obviously a fucking Dracon beam. How the fuck he got that, nobody knows. But they start fighting him. And they end up in a draw. Jake almost dies. He gets stabbed in the neck with something. Axe runs away. Because apparently the howlers have this screaming attack. Must be like, I imagine it looks something like this. And Axe is like bleeding from his ears and his eyes, and he fucks off. He fucks off, and the others are under attack, and it doesn't go well. But they escape with their lives, mostly because of Eric, who, as we remember, has got super strength, like unbelievable strength, but also he can't fight because he hasn't got the Pemalite crystal, which is used to reprogram him. When they come back, Axe is clearly ashamed of himself. He won't really talk to anyone. He's sort of turned the other way. He's ashamed that he ran away. And there's a little bit of a subplot going on here where Jake tries to convince Axe that, you know, it was understandable that you ran away as you did. You weren't morphed. You couldn't just morph back or demorph. And it's a nice little subplot, but it all plays into Jake's leadership. And I'll tell you what, Jake in this book, like the book itself, I could find ne'er a flaw. Just outstanding from Jake in this book. And him talking to Axe in the way that he does, he brings him aside, tries to give him an understanding leadership tone, but when he needs to, there are times when, for instance, the second time they're under attack, and they're in Guide's little house that he's keeping them in. Howlers are coming through, and Axe is like, no, I'll redeem myself, you lot go on without me, and I'll fucking defend you. Jake is like, right, you know you always call me Prince. I'm your Prince. If you mean that, you will fucking do as I say. Get moving, get out of there. Fucking yes, Jake, praise be. Awesome, I absolutely love that. He is becoming right a little leader, isn't he? Quite a little dictator. One of the good ones. Not that there are any good dictators. He's the one good dictator. No, he's just a good military leader at this point. Good may be a bit of a stretch, but he's getting there. He's getting there. Once again, the Animorphs escape with their lives, mostly because of Eric, because every time the Howlers come up, he just fucking wedges himself in a door. Eventually the Howlers just go through a wall next to him, but by that time, the Animorphs manage to escape each time. And we just continue exploring this Escort world and learning a bit about the Escort, how all these different guilds operate. It's a very capitalist system that they have. And there's even a shopping guild whose sole job is just to buy things to keep the economy moving. Now, the whole point of the escort here, the whole reason the Ellimist seems to want to keep them going, as we find out, is because these are actually Yeerks. Now, at first, the Animorphs are a bit shocked to find this out, because Guide, the escort they're walking around with, says, we are called Yorts. I imagine it's sort of like a subspecies sort of thing. So along the evolutionary line, earlier on they diverged and they went one way, the Yeerks went the other. But what they've done is they've created a symbiote, which is this created being that they have to live with. It stops them from having to go invade other races. And what that means is, if the Yeerks were to come across the escort, which for whatever reason the Ellimist believes would be in about 300 years' time, it might be a bit late by that time, I would say, but whatever, mate, you do what you do. And if the Yeerks were to see the Yorts, or what were now the escorts, they might think, well, we could do that. It means we wouldn't have to keep going to new planets to find new hosts. And we could just settle and do what they're doing, because they're living their lives. They're shopping and fucking all this stuff. They're satisfied. They're happy. Right? When I was thinking of this, I recently saw a few documentaries. But if you look at things like the Berlin Wall and the divide between North and South Korea, you've got a highly prosperous society on one side. So South Korea, West Germany. And then you've got like the communist side. And there's always one side, the communist side, that looks over and says, it's fucking shit over here. I want to get over there. And they usually get shot down because communists can't operate if their people all want to fuck off. So they just get shot. But would it be like that? So the Yeerks see, they think, hold on, that's a better system than the one we have there now. Let's fucking go over there. That sort of thing. Is that the sort of thing? I imagine Michael and Catherine, that they obviously lived through the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the communist regime of the Soviet Union, essentially. Maybe that had an impact on this. It's not beyond belief, but again, that might just be my interpretation. They might be thinking something else. This has been a bit of a tangent. But that would be detrimental to Kryak. Imagine Kryak is... Who was the leader of the Soviet Union? Was it Gorbachev? Gorbachev, I believe. He's there and he's looking at all his people just leaving, trying their best to flee. And his system is failing. It's got problems. Is Kryak basically the Gorbachev? Possibly. It's basically, it all comes down to, this is bad for Kryak if this happens. Because it gives the Yeerks an insight of what they can have that will protect the other free species of the galaxy. Now, there is a problem here in that, why have the Yeerks... I mean, the Yeerks could potentially do this. I mean, they've attacked the Arn, who would have had this possibility. And also, if the Yeerks would be, or the Yorts were satisfied with having these bodies, the Yeerks have a lot of bodies as well. All the Yeerks... What is it the Yeerks want? Put it that way. It seems to me that the Yorts, all they wanted was the ability to do the things that they're doing as the escort, you know, having this little system and, you know, living up in the clouds and whatever. And they seem happy with that. What is it the Yeerks want? Because they've got Hawk-Bajir hosts. They've got human hosts. Granted, they probably don't want Taxons or Geds because they're a bit shit, but they've got humans and Hawk-Bajir. They've certainly got the Hawk-Bajir. Why, if that was all they wanted, why wouldn't they just invade the Hawk-Bajir and then just stay there? The Hawk-Bajir had a pretty good life as far as we're concerned. So the Yeerks must want something more, which makes me think, why then would they be enticed by the Yort/escort way of life? They wouldn't be, because they're after something more than that. That's a theory video for another day, I suppose. The Animorphs are attacked again by the Howlers, who just seem to be tracking them now. And things are looking bad. Cassie is taken down, Rachel is taken down, and Jake decides to lure the Howlers away. And he takes them to the edge of a platform, thinking, that's how I could dispose of one of them. One of them follows him as he's in Birdmouth and plunges over the edge. And Jake has a plan. Right, so he chases this howler, lands on him, demorphs, which was highly risky, but it paid off. Because he managed to knock the Dracon beam away, and as he's acquiring the howler, he's also chucking off all his other weapons. Good thinking, Jake. And just before he hits the ground, he's finally able to morph back to the Falcon and fly away, leaving this howler to its doom. Flies back up, and Guide has found them all another place to live. Temporarily, of course. Now, we know all along that the Escort have been selling and buying memories. So they've got this all these banks of memories here, there, and everywhere. And the Animorphs come up with a plan, and it's quite an ingenious little plan, really. Jake is able to morph the Howler, and he sees all these memories because apparently they have a collective memory, which is convenient. And all he sees is this war and fighting and all that sort of stuff. And he feels joy, essentially. And he believes that these are essentially children. And it turns out that Eric knew this, I believe, and knew that they only lived up to about 3 years. They never reached an adult phase. So they're like giant axolotls, really. But Eric didn't tell the Animorphs because he wanted the Howlers dead. Eric is a funny one, isn't he? Eric's only idea is for revenge, essentially. But they get this answer because Jake morphed the Howler. But the plan that the Animorphs have now, because they have a collective memory, is to try to fill these Howlers with memories. So they all give their memories to the Escort Guide, collects them all. They're able to take down one of the Howlers long enough to attach this thing that transplants the memories. And the memories just fill these Howlers. And they get all these memories of pleasant things. One of the things they get is where Jake kissed Cassie. Because when Jake came back from the plunging Howler, he ran up to Cassie and gave it was a fucking snog, I tells you. It was a snog. And, you know, that Marco and Rachel tease them and all that. That's the first time we've ever actually seen Jake and Cassie kiss like that. And I mean, I've hardly ever talked about the Jake-Cassie thing, because it's always just sort of been in the background. It's never been that important. But now we've had the moment where they kiss, and it's almost like this is the moment where they are now officially a couple. I'm calling it. Because they had a snog. That was it. He fell for Demon Cassie. These Howlers are now full of memories. And because of that, gone. Just vanished. Because Kryak got rid of them. Why did Kryak get rid of them? Because they were tainted. He only allowed them to keep the memories of fighting and all that sort of stuff. Because if they learnt about other races and how they're sentient living things with minds of their own, it wouldn't be a game to them anymore. It's an ignorant evil. It's a childish evil where you don't understand what it is you're doing. And that is why Jake has this little moral conflict. And he recalls at the very end of the book seeing that Howler falling to his death. And that's another little memory that's going to stick with him. At first, he was, in a way, happy for that to happen. But looking back, he thought that Howler didn't know any better. Didn't know any better. And that adds a level of, is it empathy or is it sympathy? Brain just shut off there for a second. Before they disappear back to Earth, they're transported to wherever Kryak is. And the Elmist is there as well. And they're having a bit of a fucking, up yours, mate, sort of little... The Elmist is basically taunting Kryak, saying, these are my champions. And Kryak has a little bit where he's saying, oh, I'll get you Animorphs, you'll rue the day, all that sort of shit. And he says, I've eradicated their memories, the Howlers will no longer feel this way. But Jake says he morphs Howler again so he can tap into this collective memory. And he looks through it, and there's just one little bit that he saved, and it's that kiss that he has with Cassie. And what was the line again at the end? The cheesiest thing that's ever happened in Animorphs. I'd morphed back to human, and when I had my own mouth again, I said, "You were too late, Cryak. Something got through to the Howler's collective memory." "What?" he demanded. Love. I mean, that's probably the corniest line in Animorphs to date. But that's practically it. They get taken back to Earth, and the Elmist is still there just for like a parting thing. And he says, oh, the Howlers in the future, because you can see the future apparently, in the future will attack a race called the Shaft Den. And because of what you've done, they will unleash their new kissing attack on the Shaft Den. Awesome. That's weird. So these Howlers will just come up and start kissing these Shaft Den, whatever they are. That was, and that's the end of the book. Awesome. There are so many alien races that are thrown into this one that it's hard to remember them all, but there was a list of loads of them that the Howlers had eliminated, the Nashimi and the Novotny, stuff like that. There's also one called Graffin's Children, which was an interesting one, because that's the first memory they saw, and Jake saw this memory. No, actually, I believed Eric showed it to them. He showed them this memory of these weird little stumbly-fumbly things fucking marching through the woods from the Howler's perspective, and they start this howl. And the way it's written, these things just pop. Sort of like, I imagine it was much like that scene from Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where their faces are melting or shriveling or just exploding. And that was quite graphic. But Animorphs is known for being graphic, and today is no exception. What was the message of this book? Well, there's a lot of stuff about memory. A lot of stuff about memory and what memories can do to you. Lived experiences, what you've lived through that alters who you are as a person. And how you are a product of your memory, which is very much true. I mean, there's obviously going to be some level of genetics in play, but I think for the large part, when you grow up, you're a product of your memory. It's not so much a lesson as just a fact about life, I think, really. But there's a few things in this book that do confuse me. So we've got the Elmist and Cryak, who are these God and Satan. Cryak's more of he's a combination of Satan, Hitler, and just general badness. You do wonder what's going on in the background here. It's a bit above the Animorphs' heads, so it's obviously not going to be in the books, but why the escort? Why were they both, were the Howlers brought there as well? Why specifically the escort? They tried to go some way to explain it, what with the Yeerks, be able to see them, but if that's in 300 years' time, what help is that to the humans? What help is that to any race? Because 300 years is a long time. I think the Yeerks will have won or lost completely by that point. But there's obviously a lot in the background that we're not privy to. And that book seems to put that across quite a lot, because there are a lot of unanswered questions, but they're not unanswered in the way that the book's not done its job. It just adds a big layer of mystery into the backdrop of the Animorphs lore. And there's a lot of lore in this book, even though it's hidden in this strange Legoland world. The Escort are a very interesting alien race. So it's the Yeerks, but they've become capitalists and they just live on their own little planet selling things to each other. And yeah, a whole bunch of alien races thrown in. The Chi as well. Eric was an interesting character in this one. I've always said, what is Eric's mission? What is he doing? Because several times he's given the Animorphs dodgy information, and I do wonder if he's a double agent. Does this book lend itself to that, or does it bring him back? I don't think it does either. He, as he states in this book at one point, he's just simply out for revenge on the Pemelites. But if he was a double agent and was working with the Yeerks, why would the Elmist include the Chi in his plans? which sort of takes away from that little theory of mine. But I don't think it discards it totally. So I'm still working with that little theory going on in the background. And by the end of the reread, I'll probably do like a massive analysis looking at this chi problem. Maybe the Ellimist threw Eric in because he knew that Eric was the key to the Animorphs' survival and that he was a necessary component for them. Maybe that was the entire reason. What I do find interesting is that when Eric first comes into the barn at the start of the book, he says, oh yeah, the Ellimist filled me in. As if he's just fucking Bob from down the street. Yeah, I know that guy. Yeah, he filled me in. Don't worry about it. Since when did Eric know the Ellimist personally? I don't fucking know. Maybe he's another one of those overlords and he just doesn't tell anyone. So you've got God, Kryek, and Eric is the angel Gabriel, just fluttering around God, doing mischievous shit. I've just realised I never turned my light on. What a silly Billy I am. Anyway, that's the book. And there's a lot of stuff that I've probably forgotten to talk about, but there is quite a lot in this book. What do I think of it? Right, Jake's leadership. I found no flaws. He was generally great. He didn't have any fucking winning the war moments or fucking... he's got a 9. It's a 9 out of 10, and it's a good 9 out of 10. Really good leadership by Jake in here. He acted when he needed to, he disciplined when he needed to, and he had the understanding face when he needed to. Jake, fucking solid job. The book itself, 10. 10, no question. 10 out of 10, this book. And I would go so far as to say that this is possibly the best book in the series, at least up to this point. Is it as good as The Predator? It could be better. We'll see how it ages with me. But this book is stunning. And I'll tell you why it's stunning. Not only is it well written, not only have there been very few notes on my page, so there's, as far as I'm concerned, very little inconsistency and it runs well with the continuity of the series. But it's just fun. The action's great. The plot is interesting. The things that they do are great and interesting. I wouldn't say it's completely necessary to the book. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that the actions that happen in this book have very little effect on what's to come. But then, I haven't really read what's to come yet, at least not for many years, so I could be wrong. But I'm not sure if much that we read in this comes into play later on. But this is like a really good sitcom episode. So if you're watching, I don't know, Red Dwarf, which is the only sitcom series I ever really watched. This is like a season 5 peak episode where just everything fits so nicely together. It's fun, it's exciting. The characters are all on top form as well. And it's just so good. It is just so damn good. Everything about this book. I can't think of any major flaws. I can't. I cannot put enough praise on this book. It has got to be one of the best, if not the best, Animorphs book. The Attack, number 26. Awesome. Absolutely awesome. Anyway, what's the next book? The Exposed, number 27, which, I mean, I said a couple of episodes ago, fucking hell, a couple of reviews ago, oh, the Chi only seem to appear in Marco books. Well, they're going to appear in the next one as well. 3 straight books in a row. It's the Chi Bonanza. We'll see how that one lives up to this one. This, however, is one of mine. This is a fan fiction called The Interrogation. If you like fan fiction, then go read that. Link is in the description. We also have the Animorphs Discord, where we talk about all things Animorphs. It's quite a nice, active place. We're going to have more quizzes in the future and more Animorphs Against Humanity games. Thank you very much for watching. I won't forget to put that on next time. I'm such a silly bugger, aren't I? Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you for the next one. Ta-ra.